Are you looking for affordable office space in Marion? The professional building located at 685 Delaware Avenue is the place for you. For more information, call 740-383-6803. Office space is now available. Again, telephone number 740-383-6803.
This is Scott Spears, and today we're joined by one of my all-time favorite broadcasters who happens to be an Ohioan, which helps, Bud Collins. Bud's career...
Hey, Scott.
Yeah, hey, Bud, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Very well.
I'm going to finish this intro up here. Bud's already jumped in on me. Bud's career was sidelined in 2011 due to a fall and a ruptured quad tendon, but today the man with the colored pants is back, and we're so glad to have him here. Dressed down today, Bud. A beautiful sweater there.
Thank you very much. My wife purchased this. She's very good at this sort of thing. She also acts as an engineer for this program we're doing, moving equipment and making sure that I've washed my face, and she's excellent.
Well,
Excellent.
we should let people know that we're doing this via Skype. Bud at his home there in Boston, and we here in Ohio. This is kind of neat, Bud.
Well, I think it is. I've heard of Skype. I have some friends who call their relatives in South America with it, but this is as a guy named Rossi, who was a ring announcer at the Boston Garden years ago when I was covering boxing, and he would say, this is the last and final round. And however, it's not for us. We're ready to go.
That's exactly right. You know, Bud, one thing I want to talk about, I've never been to your home or seen the inside of your home, but that is a beautiful landscape behind you. How long have you lived there?
Well, I tell you, my wife has lived here forever. I've lived here the last 20 years. And it's her garden. She's a genius with gardens. And in fact, we've got a couple of trees growing right behind me inside.
That's amazing. You know, I don't think people think of people in Boston as having big gardens all year round like that, but it's beautiful.
Well, ours is not big, according to my wife, but there are big gardens. There's, of course, the garden that is the center of the town. Here's one of these.
Amaryllis.
I see that. That's beautiful.
You've never had amaryllis on your show.
Amaryllis.
Or even amaryllis either. But Public Garden is the center of Boston, the city, and it's a gorgeous garden.
You know, Bud, when you live in a home like that with all the light and all the trees and the plants, does it make you feel better day to day when you get up in the morning?
Oh, it absolutely does, except 2 days ago when we got hit by a blizzard. I wasn't very happy about that. But I was still able to get out. They had the plows out, and I was able to take my daily walk. So that's what I'm occupied with these days.
Well, I want to talk about that, Bud. I want to start out with that, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. But for people who don't know, who haven't seen you around in the last couple years, what exactly happened in 2011?
Well, it was a freak accident. I was at the Marriott near the Fleshy Meadow grounds for the U.S. Open, and I was awakened and I was turning on a light, and I reached in the wrong direction. I was a little sleepy, and I hit my head across the room, and I ruptured that quad tendon, and it was a bad fall. I didn't know how bad it was until they got to repairing it, and that took almost 2 years.
What has the last 2 years been like? I know there have been a lot of surgeries, and it's been a rough 2 years.
Well, I don't recommend surgery to anybody, but I had good doctors. Boston is famous for its doctors, but the first few operations, it just didn't click. Now I'm okay, but I've got to regain my speed of mobility. And so I'm going to be in Indian Wells in 2 weeks out in California for that tournament, and that'll give me a chance to roam around outside and see how well I'm doing.
When you were laid up the last couple years and haven't been able to maintain the daily schedule that you were so normal, was so normal for you for so many years, what was that like?
Well, it was kind of boring. I spent the largest segment of this operation and operations, plural I should say, in the hospital. And so that wasn't a lot of fun, but the doctors and nurses were great. And I had fun with them. I learned a lot about them, and they learned a lot about me. And then I started practicing walking just in the halls of the hospital, New England Baptist Hospital. And I got better and more proficient. And they finally said, well, you can go home and work with a trainer, which I've been doing.
You're in rehab, Bud.
And I was in rehab, and I have no complaints about it. Good hospitals I treated with, fine doctors, and I'm alive. And I think I'm going to be back. I don't know how much work I'm going to be doing, but if anybody wants to hire me, I'm ready.
Well, that's what I wanted to get into, Bud, because, you know, when you left, you were doing so many things. First question, are you able to get back and raring to go and get out there and use that great voice and great talent of writing you've had for so many years?
Well, thank you for that. I don't know. I'm going to find out.
You'll write for your website.
And I'll write for my website and some other pieces that I'm starting to do. It's a funny thing. When I got laid up, I lost interest in writing for a while. And I kept saying to myself, come on, you're a writer. It didn't always work out that way. But now I'm moving along. I've got a computer. I can even send emails, I think. And there are wondrous things that can be done with computers. But I do miss my typewriter.
Absolutely. Why do you think you lost your interest to write for a little bit?
I don't know. I probably was a little depressed for a while at my situation, but it wasn't going to help anything to be depressed, so I got over that. But it's a funny thing. I got to a spot there where I read the daily papers, the Boston Globe and the New York Times, and that was about it. I didn't I didn't read as much as I thought I would, and it just was an interesting time, which I don't want to repeat.
No, I can imagine not. What is that depression like? Because a lot of people have that, Bud, when they have surgery. How do you get over it? How did you get through it?
Hard to get up in the morning.
The hardest thing was getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, which surprised me because I never had any trouble with the other years of my life. But I had to force myself to get out of bed. Now I'm okay with that one. But I still, once in a while, look longingly at that bed and say, well, I ought to stay another year. But I'm just kidding, of course. But depression, I think it affects a lot of people. I had it a little bit, but fortunately, I think I've escaped it. And certainly when I went to the U.S. Open last year for 4 or 5 days just to feel my way around. And it was very gratifying because people I didn't think knew my name or anything about it were most friendly and were glad to see me apparently. I sold some of my books and I said, well, I'll be back there next year. And now that's approaching, of course. It'll be in September. But the depression, it makes you feel sorry for yourself a little bit, and I got over that, I think, because I'm a very, very lucky man. Got a great wife, I have a good track record, and I enjoy life.
That's great to hear. Bud, what was a day like, typical day like for Bud Collins before the surgery? What was a day like?
Before I fell?
Yes.
Well, that was, of course, at the U.S. Open. And I've been doing that for, I think, 50 years or something like that. And whatever the number is, it's a lot. And I would get up in the morning and have a swim at the motel we stay at. They have a nice pool. That got me going. And then I'd go watch matches. And then I did some television for
Tennis Channel.
Tennis Channel. And they've been very good to me. And I did some other television for various employers. So do this one for 2 days, that one for 3 days, and I enjoyed doing that. And then it would be time about 5 p.m. when I would sit down and write my column for the Boston Globe. And get that done. There were a couple of years when I did play-by-play radio, and I really enjoyed that play-by-play radio of the tennis when it got down to the quarterfinals. And maybe I can do some of that again. I don't know. I haven't really discussed employment with anybody except the people at Tennis Channel who've been very kind to me. And so we'll just see how it goes. If the dreaded word in my life is retirement, I don't want to retire. And sometimes I think it might be better because I have this wonderful, gorgeous woman who sleeps with me, thank goodness. And she says, you know, maybe a little retirement wouldn't hurt. Just do some traveling. So I don't know, but I don't think I'm ready to retire.
I hope not. I hope you're not ready. Bud, what is a day like today? Now when you're not doing as much, what's a typical day like?
Well, today I had a couple of assignments at Longwood Cricket Club, just outside of Boston, which is the second oldest club for tennis in the United States. They have a building there called the Longwood Covered Courts, and 2 indoor courts. And when they were built in 1913, there weren't many such buildings around. The 7th Regiment Armory in New York was where the National Indoor Championships were played. And there were other armories and various buildings, but the Longwood Covered Courts were probably the first in the United States to be used just for tennis. And it's a wonderful club. I won a badge there in 1961 playing in the U.S. indoor mixed doubles with a woman from the West Coast, Janet Hopps, who was a top 10 player at that time, 1961. And so she carried me brilliantly to a little gold ball that they give you if you win a U.S. championship. But anyway, what I'm doing for them is the covered courts is having, they're not quite sure whether it's the 49th, 50th, or 51st anniversary, but I'm doing some digging in old magazines to try to find out who did what in this. And it's fascinating, but certainly learning on the eyes to try to read this small print, even with a magnifying glass. But I run across things that I never knew. For instance, there was a British soldier named Hope Christ, who was a very good tennis player, and he was in World War I, we're talking about. He lost his leg, one leg, and he seemed to be a very brilliant guy. And he said, well, my tennis career is probably over with only one leg, so I've decided I'll win my club golf tournament. Whether he did or not, I don't know.
Hey, that's not bad. That's an optimistic point of view.
Yeah, he sounded like a good guy. I only read about 3 paragraphs about him, and he nearly died in the surgery, but he wouldn't still be with us, but he looked at it on the brighter side.
Yeah, which I think is what we all have to do. And other than that, in a typical day, Bud, do you relax? Do you watch the television? Do you get on the computer?
I try to watch the news. I try to watch that wonderful left-winger Maddox, and I try to keep up. I try to watch Tennis Channel too, because they're broadcasting tennis all the time. They have been a wonderful addition to the sport. And I walk every day. I walk today about 40 minutes. And so we're lucky our street has been plowed, even though there are icebergs all over the place. So I keep busy. It's not hard to do when you don't move too fast.
Bud, you had talked about Tennis Channel a bit, and of course we haven't seen you on there for a while. What is your relationship with them? Are they ready to have you come back? Do you want to come back? Is there any time frame on that?
I don't really know. I haven't had a conversation like that. What they are doing is preparing a documentary on me. And when that will come out, I don't know. But we're going to do some filming in Indian And there's something about, I did some sketches they called Bud's Beat. Did that for a couple of years, and I enjoyed doing that. That took about 60 minutes, 60 seconds, I should say, and try to give an interesting point, and that's okay with me. I'd like to still be in the business, but the people who run the business may have different ideas.
Well, let's hope not, because I want to see you back out there. You are one of the great broadcasters because not only do you have a great voice, a good opinion, and a great take on tennis, you've had the best gimmick, as far as I'm concerned, in tennis, maybe in any sport, those pants you wear. And every time, I know, every time we do an interview, Bud, I ask you to tell this story because I think it's a great story. Tell the story of how the pants came to be.
Well, the pants came to be rather innocently, and I'll tell you, it came to be in the Buckeye State. In 1966, I was in Cleveland to cover Davis Cup, the United States against Mexico, and I have a tailor who makes these trousers for me, but he wasn't doing that then, 1966. His name is Charlie Davidson. He's a wonderful guy, and he runs a men's clothing store, but it's more like a salon. You never know when the governor's going to pop in or something like that, and or writers. And so anyway, I say I've known Charlie for over 70 years. And I came in there one day, I thought I'd get a pair of white trousers to wear to Cleveland. And he said to me, you know, I have to be honest with you, you look awful on television. I'm boring. And my gosh, I thought, what do you mean, Charlie? And he said, well, you come in, you put on a pair of pants, a rather dull blue blazer, a nothing necktie, and you look like you belong at a yacht club. And you've probably never been to a yacht club. But anyway, he said, look, I just got some material from Indian Madras, which in 1966 was rather scary fabric, because nobody was doing that. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. Measure you right now. I'll make the trousers in time for your next appearance. And if you don't like them, you don't have to pay for them. But he said, you do have to wear them. Well, I said, okay, Charlie, I guess. And but then I told my wife that I was wearing a pair of trousers, and I was a little scared by them. She looked at them and said, I won't be with you when you're wearing those trousers. And
not this life.
And not this life, anyway. So there it was. At Plato, you would look at them. Now you wouldn't look at them twice. Just red and white Madras. But then, as I got to the ballpark, wishing it would rain so that I could duck out or get rid of the coat, or trousers. Actually, didn't have the coat. I was at Clark Field, they called it in those days, in Cleveland, and marching up to the press box, which was about 30 rows high. And as I began to walk, I could sense my wife was walking way behind me. And as I walked, hoping the stadium would open up and disappear, and I would disappear with it, it was a nice sunny day. So up I began to march, and as I did, I heard people whistling, and "Footy-long," and that sort of thing, and rather sarcastic. But as I got about halfway up, I said, well, this is kind of fun. I'm having a little fun here. And so I continued and went up to the press box, and I got a few boos from some Australians who were there. But I said, I'm going to keep them on. And then I went to dinner with my Uncle Studley at the Shaker Heights Country Club, in a pretty straight-laced place in those days anyway. And again, my wife said, I'll eat at another table. I can't. And there were people glaring at me. So I said, this is even better than I thought. So that was the start. And every time I find the material I like, I take it to Charlie, and he makes the trousers. And he's been doing this since 1966.
You buy fabric in different
And so we try to get fabric in different countries. I'm going to show you a few of them.
This is going to be good. Go ahead, Bud.
These are my Wimbledon trousers for the final day at Wimbledon. Strawberries.
men's fine.
Strawberries and cream. And these were from, the material was from Rome. Anita and I were walking down the street one day in Rome, and she pointed in a shop window and said, "There are your Wimbledon trousers." I said, "Where?" She said, "Look, big strawberries, wonderful." Well, I didn't think it was so wonderful then, although it's turned out marvelously. But went into the store. I knew enough Italian to ask how many meters of cloth I would need for a pair of trousers. And when I said that, pantalones of trousers, the guy looked at me like he wanted to throw me out. He didn't have any such orders, but he made them anyway, and they were a great hit. Now, these are historic, I don't mind saying. In 1974, the battle in Zaire, Muhammad Ali and his opponent, Foreman. And Ali, of course, they were selling this material on the streets in Zaire, and so I bought enough, plenty of it, so I figured it would make a pair of trousers. And I told Charlie, here they are, this is historic, Ali and Foreman, 74, in Zaire. And he lost the cloth. And so I didn't know that at the time, or I would have been a little upset. But one day I was doing the Newport, Rhode Island tournament on television, up in a booth, and I see Charlie struggling to make this climb. It's a very high grandstand. And so I'm babbling about tennis and what's before me, and there's Charlie saying, gets close enough so he's on the air saying, "Here they are, I got the pants, I got the pants." I don't know what anybody listening to that telecast thought when this little guy says, "I got the pants," but there they were, and so we pushed Charlie away from the broadcast booth, but to realize he had made the pants and they're great. These are the pantaloni fascisti. In Italian, that's the pants for the fascists. They're a party in Italy. Italy has lots of parties, but there's one called the Movimento Sociale, which my friend Johnny Clarence, he said, is the organization that backs, it's the neo-fascists. He didn't like that very much. We decided to go home. We had been overserved at a local restaurant called Bruno's, and we were starting to drive back to the hospital. It's about to the hotel and hospital. To me, they're all the same. But we're driving back. It's 3 in the morning. It's election week in Italy, and there's these people who are putting up, well, they had put them up. Everybody's in bed except for Clarence and me. They had stretched the banners across the street. You see. Anyway, there were these old ragged trousers. And so Clarence, he said, "Stop the car." I was driving. He said, "Stop the car, and we have to tear down one of those banners." He didn't like the Movimento Sociale. So I said, "You're out of your mind." I said, how it was, the pole was one of those aluminum poles up very high. Somehow, in his Tarzan or monkey act, he crawled up that pole. He got the knot, but he couldn't unknot it. And there he is, screaming and swearing, "I can't get it out." He said, "Look in the back of the car, see if there's a rope." I said, "Why would there be a rope?" But there was a rope. And so he said, "Tie it on the bumper and drive like hell." Well, I thought, it's not my country, what's the difference? But when we did that, there was this terrible racket as the cloth banner started to rip, tear, and people are turning on their lights, they're looking out the windows, screaming at us, and we didn't know what to do because all we had was this piece of this turned out, as you can see, beautifully, but all we had then were some scraps of black, red, and white. So, and green. And so we started going, Charlie said, come on, we're driving to the harbor. We got to throw it away. We can't be caught with this banner. I said, why? You don't like these people. He said, yes, but it's a federal offense to tear down an election banner. I said, oh, now you tell me. I was picturing myself in an Italian jail. And anyway, but I thought, no, we won't go to the harbor. I said, I've got a better idea. So we went to bed for a couple of hours, and he got up, waking us up, and saying, we've got to get rid of that banner. I said, that's right. We've got to find a tailor. And so we began to drive in the morning. It was a beautiful time. It was April, and it was in Sardinia. And it was a lovely time, orange blossoms. And he had to talk to people that we went by to find a tailor who felt as he did, that he was anti-movimento sociale. We found this old tailor who was quite amused by the idea because he was elderly and he wasn't getting much business at that time of year anymore. So he liked the idea. He measured us, and we had another American, Jack Crawford, with us, measured 3 guys, and said, we'll send you the trousers. I thought we'd never see them again. How's this guy going to? He had wrapped them up in butcher paper and tied them up, and I didn't know if the mail service was very good then. But in 3 months, a package arrived. 3 pairs of trousers. The Movimento Sociale. Clarity has written about it, and it's been in textbooks in Italy. So that was it. It still fits, too.
Hey, there you go. That's a great... You're lucky you're still not in prison somewhere in Italy, Bud.
Oh, no, I don't want to be in prison in Italy. Look, this material is from the Himalayan monarchy, Bhutan, Bhutan. Went there on a trek and to write about it, I would say 10 years ago or so. And what we did was get a couple of Bhutanese flags with the dragons on it. And again, took them to our tailor, Charlie. And
that's a great pair.
It's a wonderful pair. Well, we've got a few more, but I think we've taken enough of your time, Scott.
Well, do you have a favorite pair, Bud?
Oh, here's a pair I like very much. I like the material. It's from Australia.
No, Aboriginal.
It's the Aboriginal design, and I usually wear it if I have to go to a formal occasion. It goes very nice with a dinner jacket. And didn't cost much either. Very reasonable.
What is your favorite pair, Bud?
Oh, I think the Ali and Foreman pennant, because there was so much meaning there. I had to go to Zaire twice to cover the fight. The Foreman was ill the first time around, so he couldn't make it. And the whole Foreman was a big favorite, and we had a lot of people, of course, there for Ali. And it was a very surreal night. They played it starting at 3 a.m., so it would be on good time in the United States at about 10 p.m. So it would, I think, from its memories, and Ali, I'm very fond of Ali, and covered a lot of his fights and spent time with him in various naughty deeds. But anyway, he's a good story too. And if you let me come back someday, I'll tell you one Muhammad Ali stories.
I would appreciate that. Now, Bud, one thing I want to talk to you about, you had a long-standing relationship with the Boston Globe. What is your relationship with them today?
I don't know. It's as simple as that. I do not know. And nobody has spoken to me about it. And if they want me to write some more, I will. If they don't, well, it's been a wonderful sojourn over 50 years. And I got to meet an awful lot of great people because of the group, and because most people think about me, if they think about me at all, as tennis. And of course, I probably made my name in tennis. But I loved, my first beat was boxing, and I loved Muhammad Ali. I met him. I remember one time he said, he caught me, I was at my typewriter somewhere, we were in a hotel lobby. And he looked down at me and he said, Collins, you do the writing and I'll do the fighting. And I thought might be a good paragraph to open a book.
Hey, that's not bad at all. But in this career that has spanned so many years and still is going strong, what's the highlight? What's the greatest moment?
Oh, I can't really tell you, because there have been a lot of great moments. Ali has been certainly a strong-arm guy in my memories. I spent 2 months in Vietnam during the war, writing about the war, and was scared every minute. And but that was, I felt at that time that it was, 1969, and the war was still on, although they were trying to say it was finished. And I felt that since I was there on a Davis Cup trip, that's what got me to Vietnam with Arthur Ashe, and Arthur was playing for the troops, and I was sort of a liaison guy. But when it came time for the team to leave, I decided I'm here. This is one of the great awful moments of our history, and I better stick around a few days and look at it. So I'm more braver than anyone else, and a lot more cowardly many times.
Bud, what was it, as you said, you've covered a lot of sports, a lot of boxing. What is it about tennis that it just became your niche? What is it about tennis for somebody who's never watched or never followed tennis that gets you so involved?
Well, for one thing, I didn't have any choice. My first newspaper job in Boston was at the Herald, which no longer exists. But when I arrived in Boston, there were 8 daily newspapers. And so I was lucky to catch on with the Herald as a copy boy. And there was very little tennis covered, but the sports editor, Eddie Costello, said to me, I'm sorry, but I've got to send you out to cover some tennis. I liked tennis. I played in college, and but for some reason, I looked a little staggered by that, because it was at Longwood Cricket Club, which has so much history behind it. And the sports editor said, "Now look," he said, "don't object to anything I tell you. Some people have to do these jobs." He didn't realize I was thrilled, and he said. We have he mentioned one guy's name who was useless and who was drunk, and there were a couple of other, and people didn't want to cover tennis. They were uncomfortable with it. But I found out that it was quite similar to boxing. You've got 2 guys going at each other, and the crowd that was around boxing, and I think that's all gone now, they were right out of Guys and Dolls. And so covering boxing was terrific, because there was nothing you could write that could libel anybody. They were all eligible. So I liked it, and of course, with that newspaper, the Herald, they were short-staffed and had to cover everything. It was a great experience.
As a journalist, is it more exciting to broadcast the game, or is it more exciting to write about the game?
Depends on the game. You know, some big championship may be dull as anything. And on the other hand, something you didn't expect is terrific. And so we had the world welterweight champion, Tony DeMarco, was a Bostonian, and he was good to cover because he was all puncher and fearless, and got knocked out a lot of times.
Bud, for a lot of people who are going into broadcasting for whatever reason, you've done it as good as anybody did it. What advice would you give to a broadcaster coming into this business?
Well, thank you for your compliment. I'm asked this all the time, and I say that you probably should go to college. You should study Spanish. I mean, not too long a time, Spanish is going to be the #1 language of our country. So you ought to be able to talk Spanish because there are so many athletes who speak Spanish, and you have a little edge. Then I would study economics because that's all sports is now, money and economics. So if you're set with those and you don't say, me and him are going somewhere, which alarms my wife. She still believes in grammar. But I don't know if anybody else does or not. But that would be my advice to any kid coming along, boy or girl.
Bud, when you were up in the booth and you were covering one of those games that wasn't so exciting live, what was your rule of thumb on how to keep the audience entertained? Because you can't walk away from the microphone.
No, I think I tried to, you're not going to tell somebody it's a great match or a great bout if it isn't. People know that much. On the other hand, I will try to dip into my knowledge of the history of whatever we were watching, try to find something unusual perhaps, trying to keep somebody's attention going. I had quite a row once with Leon Nastasi, who was known for his carrying on, and he decided that he didn't like a call by a lines judge, and he quit trying, and this was the Canadian Open. And so I said, well, this guy is quitting, and he's stealing your money by quitting. And then I went off to some other similar occasions with other players and tried to work a little. In other words, I was doing a story, but it was on the air.
Does it ever cross your mind? Do you ever say, I shouldn't say that? Or are you strictly, if it comes into your mind, you're going to say it?
Well, I think if it's important to the production, you have to say it. We had a in quite a long while ago, 1968, I think, 69. We were doing it was called the Avis Cup, and it was in the island of Hawaii, the big island, and Nastasi, my man Nastasi again, was playing Arthur Ashe for the title, and Arthur had made a brilliant shot to win a game, and Nastasi said, oh, that bloody meter. Now, the people at home heard that, but the people in the stadium didn't. It was hooked up in such a way that only the people at home in that telecast would get that. But that was just an awful, he was not a vicious guy. He was not a racist. But somehow this popped out. Well, there were calls all over the country from NBC, and NBC tried to tell me that I hadn't heard it, but I had heard it. So I had a little go around with my producer over that, and for about a week, I was accused of not reporting a negative fact, and I reported it all right, but nobody heard it in the stadium.
Mm. That's a very interesting story. Before I let you get out of here, Bud, I want to ask you a few things here. One about Ohio. The last time you were here, to my record, you were speaking at a commencement, and there was a little hubbub that day during the George W. Bush administration, I believe it was.
Yeah.
If you want to tell us what that was about, you can, but do you plan on coming back is the big question, to the home state?
Probably never be invited back, but
That's
I
not
was
true.
delivering the homecoming, well, not homecoming, the graduation commencement speech, and I thought I had a pretty good speech. I said the 7 principles that you kids want to work on, or better money for education. I went on down the line, get out of all these rulers within. They're doing nobody well. I started getting booed, and people cheering and saying, well, not cheering, but making naughty noises and saying USA, 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 so forth. Well, I thought that these were good points for everybody to get out of Iraq, to get out of Afghanistan. And that, of course, is all. It's not that I was a great prophet. Anybody who had a history book could tell the history of Afghanistan was strictly suicidal. The Russians found that out. And the English found that out, and now we found it out. So, anyway, I wasn't approved very much by my dear old alma mater, Baldwin Wallace College. It's a good college. I'm glad I went there, but they wanted a speech of my beliefs, and they got it.
Before you left on that trip, after you gave the speech, did the school talk to you? Have they talked to you since?
Well, I got a note from the president of the college at that time, who's no longer there, saying that he approved of what I said, and he was sorry that the speaker would be booed. But I've been booed other occasions too, so that's part of the job.
Did you expect the booing?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I just kept on going.
Well, you know what? I think it's time you're invited back. I think we'd like to have you back again. We need that honesty. Bud, this is not anything to do with age or anything of that nature, because I think you're going to be around a long time. But what do you still want to do? What's left on your to-do list, your bucket list, as they call it now?
Well, I want to keep my wife happy because she's a great prop for me. She knows more about tennis than anybody, but she'd never seen a match until she met me. And that means either she had been negligent or I'm a bad teacher. But anyway, I think we'd like to do some traveling. She's climbed Kilimanjaro and various mountains. And I did one of them with her once and vowed never to do it again in New Zealand. So we'll have plenty to do. And she is, as you remarked at the beginning of the show, she's a wonderful gardener, and she has to take care of those plants too. And I think I'll write a memoir. I don't know how it'll be, but at least get that done. I did write one about tennis, but I've done a lot of other things besides tennis or boxing.
Absolutely. Bud, if you never go into the broadcast booth again, and you never write for the Globe again, will that be, I don't want to say a regret, but will that be a letdown?
Oh, I think so, sure.
Yeah.
I think that I can still handle it, not the schedules I used to handle when we were coast to coast and off to Hawaii or into Russia or something like that. I've been very lucky in the traveling, but I still think there's some usage in me.
I would agree. Bud, I want to get your opinion on one current event. Wrestling not going to be in the 2020 Olympics. Kind of shocking. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a crime. And I don't care much for wrestling, but the fact that it was one of the two original Olympic sports, and somehow they get some awful things. Softball, I think, and golf, and things that you don't need. To me, the Olympics is people doing things like throwing themselves about, and that's wrestling. And I know the wrestling people are trying to fight it, but it seems a little hopeless, and I think that's absolutely wrong.
Yeah, a big uprising there, and I'm not sure if it'll hold up to 2020. Bud, you mentioned the U.S. Open last year. You were honored on that day. I just watched that footage before we did this Skype interview. What was that like to have them recognize you?
Renegades by 5 games to 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join the U.S. Open in welcoming back International Tennis Hall of Fame journalist, covering his 59th consecutive tennis championship here in Queens, Bud Collins.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. since you hung around, but those dreams have
I
remained.
was startled. And then I smiled, and I thought I better hold up my hat and let people know that I appreciate what they did. So yeah, that was terrific.
It was a terrific moment. Again, this final question, Bud, again, nothing to do with age. I think you've got a lot of traction left.
There's something I advise you never say this is the last question.
Well, that's right. There might be a follow-up. You never can tell.
You know, you don't want to get people scream and cheer and say, "Thank God," or something like that. But
No. This has been a great interview. But Bud, years from now, if you could write the final paragraph on your life, what would it be? Great writer that you are. How would you like to be remembered?
well, I'd like to be remembered as a writer telecaster that gave people a good time. Didn't mean I was a joke teller. I have to treat those events seriously, but if we get out of town and can wave goodbye to everybody and say, hope you enjoyed me, and maybe you can find a computer like mine and write the stuff yourself.
Well, and I do want to let people know that Bud still writes for his website. Go on the internet, search Bud Collins, and you will find it. I think he'll be doing it for a long time to come. I think we're all lucky that he'll be doing it for a long time to come. But I want to see you back in the broadcast booth, even if it's just for a moment, Bud. Because
well, I could probably get a moment or two.
Yeah, we hope you
now,
do.
for my last question, what are you doing with yourself?
Well, I'm still here, still doing radio, doing television part-time, and interviewing my heroes like Bud Collins.
Well, I'm glad you're still around, and I hope my friend Mary Hildebrand is still teaching school in Marion.
Well,
wonderful thing.
Bud, you stay well, and I want you to come back as often as possible because we love seeing you, and we love seeing that great landscape back there. That's wonderful.
Well, she's a star.
Thank you. Bud Collins, legendary broadcaster, dean of tennis broadcasting, no doubt about that. Bud,